You're welcome back. So right now we want to create the upper part of our jumpsuit, and this is our basic back block, the basic bodice for the back side, and I have just a piece of it. That's because the style I have in mind, the back is the same, so I'm just going to use this to cut two pieces for the back. But then for the front, you're making something asymmetrical. So I drafted my pattern folding the center into two, just so I can have two sides. Okay, it's an asymmetric bodice. Okay, so what I did after drafting, I traced this using my tracing wheel onto the other side. So this is a tracing wheel. If you don't have a tracing wheel, you can just spread open and measure two sides. So that means you just get to do the work twice. Okay, so I drafted here, use the tracing wheel to trace it onto the other side. Then I now brought it out using a biro so we can see it clearly. Okay, so right now we want to transfer our dart. So here we have a side dart. This is our bust line. Okay, and I've made these darts, I've connected this dart to the bust point. Note that I didn't connect it 1 inch before, and that's because I plan to transfer the dart. Okay, so when you're going to, the bust point is always a reference point when you want to transfer a dart. So we'll be transferring this dart and we'll be doing dart manipulation in this class. Okay, so I connected the dart, the waist dart, to the bust point directly, not 1 inch below this time. That's simply because I plan to transfer all the darts to one side. So let's just do this together. Okay, I probably will have posted a picture of the final look. So that's the final jumpsuit. So you get what I'm trying to achieve here. Okay, first I'm going to connect a line. So I need two lines here. This is not a rule. I just want mine to be a bit even. Okay, so I want two lines. Let me just make 1.1. Okay, let's just make it 1.15 here, and also from here 1.25 rather. So 1.25, 1.25. That's one quarter of an inch here. Okay, so I created these 2 points, and now what I'm going to do is draw a line from the bust point that will touch one of these. And now I'm going to draw another line from this same bust point to this side. Okay, so now what you're going to do is to transfer this dart here. We're also going to transfer this dart here. Just watch what I mean. So I'll just take a scissors now and cut through from this line to the bust point, and I'll do same this way. We have our first cut. So now let's cut this other one to the other bust point. So now you understand the essence of having a full pattern. That's because you're doing something that goes across the middle line. We're not making something symmetrical. Okay, so I've slashed that two line. So what I want to do now, I'll close up these two darts such that this, in doing that, in closing these darts up, this part comes open. So are you seeing what's happening? So I'm going to take one dart leg and close it over the other. Are you seeing what has happened to this one? This part is now opened while this part is closed. So that's just basic dart transfer. And this is the slash and spread method of transferring that. So now just hold here down using a tape. So we have closed this dart. Now we're going to close here as well and transfer it this way. So we are adding fullness to. Know that when you slash this line, you just make it at the bust point. Okay, so I'm going to hold it down. Just see how this part has widened again. So we've held here down. Okay, so for the other side as well, I've slashed here. See the way it's closed. Okay, it's not looking as if there's anything happening there, it's just closed. So we're going to transfer this to that. So we are transferring our 1 inch that. You hold one dart leg and close it on the other. Okay, so this dart is just 1 inch. Then you hold it down with a tape. So you seen how this part has opened a little bit? So we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to close here up. So you see what I'm doing? Just the same thing I did for the other side. So you take one dart leg and hold it, bring it close to the other, as in above the other. Then you just hold it together. So we have this 2 opening. So at this point, I'm going to even here out. Okay, this line is not that straight again, so I'm going to draw a line connecting these 2 sides together. I'm going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to cut this out without sewing allowance for now. So this is our armhole curve. I just want something more defined. Okay. So this is our slant. Okay, so we have all the parts we're not using out. So I'm going to lay this on another paper so that I can fill this up, because what we're doing is just to add fullness to one shoulder. So I'm just going to tape this to this paper so it doesn't keep shifting around. That's just the essence. Okay, all right, good to go. So now I'm going to cut out this other part again, but this time we are adding this. Okay, we are not cutting this out. I mean the paper under, we are adding it to it. So first, let's find the middle of this. So the distance between those 2 is 5 inches. So I'm going to mark 2.5 here. Distance between these 2 is 6, so I'm going to mark 3 inches here and draw a straight line to the connecting this to the middle. Okay. Okay, so if I go ahead and cut like this, I'm going to have some shortages here. So I'm just going to assume the one under is the fabric. You see this middle? So I want to close here up, kind of at the middle. So just fold this middle first. Okay, so now I'm folding. I want these 2 parts to meet, kind of this way. So are you seeing what I'm doing? Okay, so we are putting these two together as if we didn't even cut it out the first time. So once I do this, I'm going to use my tracing wheel to mark that part out. Okay, I'm marking here out. Okay, just mark the straight line to the end of this so that we can have this mark. So this is what we are going to cut out. Okay, so something just happened. I didn't know my camera had stopped recording. So you understood how I folded this part in order to raise here, but I didn't even use that method again. I told you another thing you can do, okay, is to connect the two sides of this new dart together, find the middle line and, you know, draw this middle line down, then raise this by 1 inch upward. Okay, so I connected this side to this with a line, then at the middle I raised it up by 1 inch, so I created this triangle. I hope that's clear enough. Okay, so and now I proceeded to cut out the armhole, and then this triangle, the spread we have here, cut out the neckline, then the shoulder, the other armhole, and we have this. So what I need to do now is to place this on my fabric and cut, inputting all my sewing allowance. So I'll be adding 1 inch on the sides. I'll be adding ½ an inch here. Note that this part is no longer straight because of this that we took in, so it's like a little bit curvy. Okay, so I'm going to put ½ an inch this way, ½ an inch on the armhole, ½ an inch all through this part, ½ an inch here. So the only part I'll be putting 1 inch is on the side. That's to create our side seam allowance. So, and when you are doing that, just watch me. We're going to notch all these dart points, this dart legs and the dart line, the middle. We're going to notch it so that when we fold it in on our fabric, this is what our fabric is going to look like. I mean, when we sew it in, it's going to look somewhat like this. So that's the beauty of pattern drafting. You can see what you're creating. Okay, so we're going to have something like this. Okay, so we're going to notch all these points so that when we are sewing, it won't be difficult, or we don't need to start measuring or panicking. We'll just go ahead and fold in all the notch parts we have taken. So just watch me do that. Okay, so this is our fabric. Before you work on any fabric, you have to check the stretch. Okay, for me, for this particular outfit, I want some fabric have a stretch on both sides, both across the selvage and across the grain and along the grain line. Okay, so if you do it like this, it stretches. If you go like this, it stretches. So this one does not stretch that much this way, but it stretches this way, and I prefer a horizontal stretch for this dress so that it can fit into my body properly. Okay, so don't make the mistake of cutting this way. That's across on bias. Okay, your outfit is not going to fit very well. So this is only good, mainly good for draping and some other designs, but not something like this. So I'm just going to place my clothes down. Now you have to decide which side you want to have your pleats on. So for this, I prefer the left side. Okay, so I'll be having my pleats on the left side of my shoulder. That's this part should be on the left side. So for that reason, if you're placing the wrong, this is the right side of this clothes and this is the wrong side, so I'm placing it this way so that when I put it on, this part falls on the left side because that's what I want. I'm just going to stabilize this and then we'll cut together, adding all our allowances. So you have to cut it this way such that this middle, the middle of your real pattern, not this, is it follows the grain line. So grain line is like the direction your clothes should be. Okay, so we have this to guide us. Normally you should draw a line on your pattern before spreading, just to guide you that okay, this is how this pattern was actually before we spread it. So don't mistakenly turn it this way and cut. At the end of the day, your clothes is going to be on bias. So this is the middle of my pattern and I'm just going to place it this way. and now we'll cut. So now we are going to cut this together. You can add your allowances with a chalk first before you cut, or if you can eyeball it, that's fine. I usually do that, but just to show you what I'm saying. So you can do this, add your 1/2 inch allowance using a chalk. Make sure your paper is stable. So you're going to have here straight, curve. Okay, I think you understand what I mean now. You can mark it out with a chalk first before you start cutting. So make sure your fabric and your pattern is stable. I'm adding 1 inch sewing allowance on this side. Half an inch this way. Okay, let's do this top together. So 1/2 inch up until here. Then I'll create this triangle. Let me just turn this around so you can see it properly. So while doing that, I've notched this point where we have this slant. So on this triangle here, I don't have to notch. The edge of this triangle is already an indicator. So I'll notch this other point as the other part of our fold. And we'll go straight a little bit. Create another triangle. So in between here and this other triangle, there's another notch. So just before the neckline, the end of this triangle, we have a notch. And then I'm going to now cut my neckline. I'm just shifting this around so that you see it properly. When you are cutting yours, don't shift around. It may displace things. So I'm adding 1/2 inch to this other armhole. Okay. So one thing you can do here, even though you have placed your notches, in order not to get confused, you can just go ahead and create the pleats already. So hold it. You know this part is okay. Look at these two legs. We're going to put them over each other. Now only the fabric, okay? We're not working with the paper anymore. So you can hold here down. Okay, this is actually the wrong side and this is the right side. So I want to hold my pleats inward. So let me do it again. These two legs, this first V here, I'm going to put the two together. Putting the two notches I created together. Okay, so I'm going to hold it in. So you see advantage of that extra 1 inch we raised. Okay, so we have taken care of the first plate. The second plate now, that's these 2 legs. All right, so we want our plate to face the same part. Okay, this plate face here, so we're going to hold this other 2 legs and create another plate. Putting these 2 together to create a second plate. So that's the benefit of the notches. Are you seeing all the notch? They're all on the same part. So let me just do this and show you what the front looks like. So we can now cut out this extra here, but let me show you from the front. So since we have done this, there won't be any issue at all. So you can decide on which side to face your pleats. Okay. So now this extra we have on top, we can cut it out. Okay, remember that this part is not part of our pleat, so we can cut here out and all that. You can make the pleat face inward just as you wish, but we have this now. That's all our dart transferred to this part. We are no longer going to sew any dart here, no dart here. We have transferred all the dart to this plate. I hope you understand that. So now I'll just go ahead and take my other, take the back. I'm just going to take the back. I'll cut here out when we are sewing, or I'll make it face inward, kind of. Okay, I can modify it as I like. So I'm going to take the other pattern, that's the back pattern now. The back has no issue whatsoever, but let's do a little bit of modification to give our back a better definition. So on this zip line, I want to create a slant. So you can start your slant from the chest line or from the top. There's no root to it. So I want to move here in by 1/2 inch. Remember, these are zip allowance. Okay, want to move the zip allowance by 1/2 inch. So just take your slant by 1/2 inch. But this part is already short by 1/2 inch, right? So I'm just going to place it here to return the 1/2 inch. So this is what I'll be cutting out, and I'm going to use it for my back. Remember that this bag does not have allowance. You know what this means now? Because I've shifted this inward. That means our zip allowance is something like this. Okay, we still have a 1 inch zip allowance. It's not that the zip allowance became less by 1/2 inch. Remember that we returned it here. So our zip allowance just became slightly slanted, okay? But we are not cutting through the zip allowance. I just wanted to show you that we still have a 1 inch zip allowance. It's just that it's slanted inward. Okay, so I'm going to place this on fabric and cut it out. Remember, I already told you that for the back, the boats it's symmetrical, so we don't have to make 2 patterns. So I'm placing my fabric this way. I'm going to add 1/2 inch, 1 inch sewing allowance, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch. No allowance for the zip side, and that's because the zip 1 inch allowance is already an allowance. Okay, so place it in such, don't place it like this. Don't try to make here straight with the center of your fabric. No, it's already slanted by 1/2 inch. So make sure this part is slanting in by 1/2 inch and have the base straight, a straight base. Okay, so now I'm just going to cut it out, adding my 1/2 inch sewing allowance. So I'm making use of, so I'm adding 1 inch here. I'm making use of a crepe fabric. You can make use of Ankara, scuba neoprene. But if you're working with scuba, you don't need to add any sewing allowance because it's a super stretchy fabric. and if you add any allowance, it's just going to look big. Depending on the amount of stretch on scuba, you may even need to remove in order to have the best fit. So now I have this mark that I'm just going to not take out here. This is not part of our pattern, remember. This fabric is not really cooperative when you're trying to create a straight line. So for the upper parts, I'm just going to open it up. Okay, so still placing your pattern this way. You can go ahead and mark the dart position so that you don't have to start taking a tape to measure the dart. So I just notch the position of my dart, and now I'm going to notch the top. I'm going to mark the top. Okay, so I know that I should just place my dart this way. So I'm going to do the same on the other side of this, so I don't need to start measuring when it's time to sew. So, and that's that about this. And lastly, I'm going to take my sleeve pattern and cut out the sleeve. Remember, we already added allowance and all that to the sleeve. I'm going to cut out the sleeve. I'm making a shorter sleeve than this. Okay, I'm not making this length of sleeve, probably just below the elbow this way, but it depends on you. So I'm just going to measure the length I want here, fold it in, then cut, adding my sewing allowance at the base. Okay, so depending on you, you can make yours a long sleeve, a super short sleeve, a cap sleeve and all that, but I'll be making use of a 3/4 or an elbow length sleeve. So we already have our pattern. I'm not doing anything different to the fabric. I'm just going to cut exactly this. I already have my sewing allowance in here. Okay, so here's my sleeve. I eventually went for a short sleeve, and that's because I was running out of fabric. So you can make yours long if you have enough. So this is just what I did. And when cutting, remember to notch the middle of your sleeve and also the right, just to indicate that this is the right, this is the left. You can notch the left if that's more convenient for you, but it's just so you know the side that goes to the left, the back, the side that goes to the back, or you notch the front. Like I notch the front, so I know the side that goes towards the front of my bodice and the parts that I will attach to the back. So that's just the essence of this other one. Then here, you know that at the center it should align with the shoulder line. So that's just the essence of the notch, just an indicator. So now I want to create a facing for the front and the back. So I'm just going to fold this into two. Then I'm going to take my front piece. So this is our neckline. I'm just going to hold it in, place it on the folded piece of paper so that I can cut out the neckline and part of the shoulder. Okay. So I just need to make sure that the center front here aligns with the folded edge of the fabric I'm using for facing. Okay, so once this is out, I can remove this. So my facing is just going to be like a little few inches, maybe like 4 inches. I'm just going to measure 4 inches all around, 4 inches all around. Then I'll cut 4 inches, 4 inches. Okay, so this is facing for the front. I'm going to do something similar for the back as well. So for the back facing, I have this piece of fabric which I'm just going to fold a little bit in, and I'll place the back on it so that I can map out the neckline. Okay, so I'm going to use this as the base of my facing. So for the back, I want a slightly wider facing because I want it to extend to the shoulder so that I can make use of that edge. Okay, so this is our back facing. This is our back fabric on the piece of facing. So there's no rule as to how long your facing should be, but I just made use of 6 inches from this edge of the shoulder. So if you measure it this way, it should be around 5 inches thereabout. Okay, so now I'm just going to cut the neckline out, and so once again, make sure your center back aligns with this folded edge, but we're going to split this part open anyway. Okay, so here we have our back piece with our facing and everything in place. So thank you very much for watching. The next thing we'll be doing will be to sew this. See you in the next video.